How y'all doing?
Welcome to the part 4 of the CNA Practice Test Study Guide. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos about healthcare. Also, part 1, 2, 3, and 4 is in the description below and at the link right above there. Click if you want to see the playlist. Big disclaimer, I am not a certified nursing assistant instructor by any means. I just simply use this Prometric study guide to help me pass my certified nursing assistant written exam. And most of the questions were on the test, just reworded. The link is also in the description, but the pictures are kind of blurry. So I'm doing this video instead. By the way, if you haven't watched test 1, 2, and 3, the link is right above, also in the description. I also have a video on how to pass your CNA skills in the description below. With that being said, I want to advise you to study my Prometric playlist at your leisure and use it as a comprehensive resource to pass your written exam in addition to your regular study material. So sit back, get a glass of water, breathe. I said breathe because you're going to pass your test. And let's get right into it. Question 1. Sundowning. It's a term used to describe when residents A. take a short nap throughout the day. B. show signs of Alzheimer's at a young age. C. prefer to go to bed earlier in the evening. D. become restless and agitated in the day. The answer is D, and here's why. There's some patients or residents with dementia or Alzheimer's that show behavior changes on a greater level of confusion. Like this will be like the next level. You know how a patient usually have dementia and Alzheimer's and they're confused? Well, this sundowning is the next level. It's like, I guess it's on 0 to 100. If they're at 50% with their dementia throughout the day, sundowning is like 100% because their behavior can show agitation, anxiety, restlessness, and sometimes they pace back and forth, and it's more and more prevalent in the late afternoon, and it continues into the night for some residents. So sundowning is a term used for change in behavior that occurs late in the day. You as the CNA, the nursing assistant, you share this responsibility to keep your patient, your resident, whoever is on your assignment that has sundowning, to keep them safe. Sometimes your patient may attempt to leave the facility or other behaviors that may be unsafe. They will act out. They might fight, scratch, bite. So patients who sundown may have activities planned in the care plan to provide specific activities during the day, during that time, to keep them safe and stable or distracted in a sense. So let me break down why A, B, and C is canceled out and why sundowning is D. So sundowning, if you pick A, take short naps throughout the day, would not be it, because sundowning, the definition of it is literally to be restless. When you're sundowning, you're not tired, you're active, your brain is going, and it usually is only towards elderly people that have dementia or Alzheimer's. So short naps canceled out because sundowning has nothing to do with taking naps. So B says signs of Alzheimer's at a young age. That could be the answer. And I do not knock anybody for thinking that it's B for a first try. It may seem like it. It's a sign. It's an early sign, but sundowning isn't an early sign for anybody. at a young age with Alzheimer. And a younger age with Alzheimer's would be like age 45, 50. That's like a younger age, because sundowning is ingrained when you're already at the stages of Alzheimer's. And C is prefer to go to bed earlier in the evening, cancel it out. Anything that has to do with naps, sleeping, it's not sundowning. Sundowning means that your patient will be up, they will be restless, they will be walking around pacing, talking, probably talking to themselves. Sundowning is like, this is how I want you guys to visualize it when you hear the word sundowning, because this is going to be in the field when you're on a unit that has dementia, when you're working with the patient that has Alzheimer's. Close your eyes and imagine the sun. The sun is setting on a beautiful, beautiful horizon. You can see the sun setting down. So you get where that term is coming from? The sun is setting down. When the sun sets down, that means the evening is coming. It is coming later throughout the day. The day is being done for. So sundowning is when the sun comes down throughout the day and the evening is kicking in. So when the sun goes down, your patient mood may change. You know how most of us don't have Alzheimer's at all. We're trying to learn. So when the sun goes down, most of us get tired. We just want to sleep. And that's why I say sundowning has nothing to do with sleeping, and it has nothing to do with naps, because we're tired when the sun is going down. It's the evening. You just want to sit back, relax, drink your water, and get some good sleep. But it's the opposite. When the sun is coming down for a patient with Alzheimer and dementia, they are agitated. They're up in the late day, and the late day can be whenever the sun starts setting, and sometimes it could be earlier than that. Say the sun sets at 7 p.m. in the day. There's no set time, but they can just feel it in their body. It's connected. You know how older people can feel when the rain is coming, or when the rain comes, something in your body just feels like it's thrown off. That's what's happening. So the term sundowning came for that. So I just want you guys to understand, if you see on the test sundowning and they're trying to reword, what do sundowning mean? What is sundowning? What do the term sundowning mean? And you see options that have to do with sleep and Alzheimer's, do not be tricked. Yes, sundowning has to do with Alzheimer's and dementia, but it is when you become restless and agitated late in the day or the evening. Question 2. When feeding a resident, the nurse aide noticed that the resident keep coughing after each drink of fluids. What is the appropriate response by the nurse aide? Is it A, get the resident more time to swallow? B, keep the amount of fluid small by using a spoon to get fluids? C, add thickener to the fluids and see if it helps stop the coughing? Or is it D, stop feeding and report the coughing to the charge nurse right away? Now, let me reword this question. When you are doing your skills written exam, when you're doing a skills test, when you read a question and you feel like it's very, very overwhelming and you don't understand it, think about it in a scenario like you. So this is how I will restate it. When I'm feeding my patient, me as a CNA, notice that my patient is coughing from fluids. What is the appropriate response by the nurse aide, by me as the CNA? What is the appropriate thing for me as a CNA to do when I am feeding my patient and they are coughing from fluids? So try to reword some of the questions to make it feel more you. Make it feel like you can break it down and understand it, because I want you guys to understand that this test is not trying to trick you. They just want to know, do you know the basics to go out in the field? This test is purely just to say, she's certified, he's certified, he can go out in the field, because you will learn more from the experience than through school and through whatever the test is about to bring to you. They want you to understand the written exam for you to know when the state comes when you are in the field, so you don't get your license terminated or taken away, or anything to happen to your certification at all. This is why they do this written exam for the state. And I'm gonna do a separate video talking about how school prepares you, or how school don't prepare you, and how just like breaking it down once you get on the floor as a CNA, how it's a whole different ball game. But let me refocus into the test. This is for you to get the basic knowledge to say, yes, I know the basics of being a CNA. I'm prepared to be on the floor, because you're going to learn from experience. So anytime you see a question, you think it's overwhelming, you don't understand how to reword it to fit you. Let it fit you, okay? So when feeding a resident, the nurse aide noticed that the resident keep coughing after each drink of fluid. What is the appropriate response by the nurse aide? What is the best thing will you do as a CNA if you have your patient and they're coughing? And the answer is D. Stop the feeding and report the coughing to the charge nurse right away. And the reason for this is because when your patient is coughing while eating, it can be a sign that your patient is having difficult swallowing. And they could have difficult swallowing because their mouth is dry. They can have difficult swallowing because the food is dry. Something is dry within this span, because in order to swallow, you need saliva, you need fluids with you so you can have a nice, smooth swallow. So those could be the reason that they're having difficult swallowing. Such difficult can result in like your patient swallowing incorrectly and choking on the food wrong, or choking on the fluids and it enter an airway that leads into the lungs. And this can cause a condition known as aspiration. So anytime your patient is coughing out is aspiration. Aspiration can be caused by difficult breathing. This is also known as pneumonia. So when your resident is showing any signs of difficult swallowing and coughing, you should report that ASAP to the charge nurse. In most of the written exam questions, they're going to ask you a lot of scenarios that's going to happen. They're going to say, if this happened, if that happened, what do you do? What do you do? Report it to the charge nurse. Report it to the charge nurse. Report it to the charge nurse. Most likely, like 9 times out of 10, reporting it to the charge nurse is going to be the correct answer. So you as a CNA should report it to the charge nurse. Now, unfortunately, we can't make independent decisions about techniques to try to help a resident swallow. So we can't say, no, we should do it like this, we should do it like that. We can't really say what's best for them. Only the physician can order a swallowing evaluation to determine how to safely feed the resident. And some residents who have difficult swallowing liquid may have thickener added to the liquids. However, the decision to use thickener is ordered by the doctor. And this is why I said that unfortunately, we can't make the decision on how to, this is how they should do it, this is how they should, we can't. If a person, for instance, if your patient has no teeth, right? Their food might be pureed, and pureed is like baby food. It's like, let's put all this fruits and vegetables inside a blender. Let's blend it up. Let's put it on a tray and let's feed it to Mrs. Brown, for instance. But Mrs. Brown has no teeth and she has trouble swallowing the liquid regular water. Let's put thickener inside it. But who's making all these decisions is not the kitchen, and it's not the nurses either. It's actually the doctors. They check in, they look, they tell the nurse what's the plan. The nurse put that in the plan. You read the plan and you follow the plan. That's like the healthcare chain. The dietitians read the plan, they serve the food, what's needed. So if they need thickener, we can't say they need thickener. We don't choose they need thickener. We can't evaluate that they need thickener. Most likely the physician said this resident needs to have thickener. So back to the question, if you see that your patient, your resident is coughing and choking and aspirating, the appropriate thing to do is to stop feeding them ASAP and report that coughing to the charge nurse. Most likely the nurse will either write a report or tell you what's the best thing to do as an alternative for them to stop choking. Especially if you're a new CNA. Like, if you're just confused, you do not know what to do, ask questions. It's never bad to ask questions. There's no such thing as dumb question. A dumb question is a question that's not asked at all. So please ask the question. And let's cancel out why all of these other things is not the right thing to do, especially on this exam. I want you guys to understand, like, the exam is the correct thing to do, but when we're in the field, it's gonna be a whole different ball game when you're on the field and when you learn from the book. So let me break down why these are not correct. A says get the resident more time to swallow. While that may be good, you have to read the question. It says that when you're feeding a resident, the nurse aide noticed that the resident keep coughing after each drink. So that means you give Mrs. Brown a spoon. Mrs. Brown said, you give her another spoon. She said, how many times did Mrs. Brown cough? 2 times. You give her a third one. That's 3 coughs right there. She keeps coughing. Now, if Mrs. Brown, you give her first spoon, she's coughing. You give her a second spoon, she's like, this is good. Okay, she didn't keep coughing. She had some time to swallow. Maybe she needed some time to swallow. But this question is saying keep coughing. So we have to cancel out give them more time to swallow. I know you want to just give them more time to swallow, but how many chances can you give somebody to swallow if they keep coughing? How many chances? So look at the question. Take your time when you're reading the question. If you have extra time on your exam, go back, read the questions again, read them in detail, and make sure you feel sure and confident. And I feel like you guys are going to pass because you're listening to this podcast style and I'm breaking down these questions because I don't just want you guys to memorize the question and assume that this is what your exam is going to be. I want you guys to understand scenarios and what's the best answer when they're rewording the question. So this question is saying keep coughing. So A is canceled out because if Mrs. Brown coughed more than 1, 2, 3 times, you just got to go to the charge nurse. B says keep the amount of fluids small by using a spoon to get fluids. So B is basically saying if you give Mrs. Brown a spoon of fluid and she's coughing from it, put it in a spoon. Like if you give Mrs. Brown a sip of water and she's coughing, get the spoon and feed her. But that's incorrect, and here's why. Because reducing the amount of fluids is not going to prevent her from keep coughing at all. Because you're still giving her fluids, and if the fluids is causing her to cough, you need to report that to the nurse. You see how everything is going full circle? Everything is going full circle. You may think, okay, I'm in a scenario. I'm giving Mrs. Brown her fluids. I reduce the fluids. I give her time, but she's still coughing. What do I do? You're in panic mode. You see how it goes full circle? Report it to the charge nurse. And C, let's see why C is canceled out. Add thickener to the fluids and see if it helps stop the coughing. You remember how in the beginning I said that only the doctors can choose what is going on with them. Only the doctors can say their diet is parade, is thickener. We cannot add thickener, especially if, say, Mrs. Brown has teeth and she's just drinking regular water. No thickener, no nectar thickener, just regular water. And she has teeth. Who are we to choose to add thickener if it's not in her care plan? That can get your license probably like striked out, or that's just a warning. Like, you can't be the one to say, let's just add thickener since Mrs. Brown is coughing. What if the thickener makes her cough more? Maybe she really can't digest what it is that she's eating. And this is why A, B, and C is canceled out, and D is correct. Stop feeding her completely. She keeps coughing. Stop feeding her. And just go to the charge nurse. Most likely, you will end up going to whoever nurse is on the floor. So it could be the LPN, it could be the RN, and the charge nurse is not on the floor. But you report it to the nurse, and the nurse will report it to the charge nurse. So regardless, everything goes to the charge nurse, and then the charge nurse report it to the doctor. So if you don't know, 9 times out of 10 on the test, if it's asked you, what do you do in a given scenario? What do you do? What do you do? Who do you go to? The charge nurse. The charge nurse. Okay? Go to the CR. Wait, not the CR. The CN. The charge nurse. The charge nurse. I said the CR because I'm thinking CRN, charge register nurse. Most likely the charge nurse is going to be a registered nurse. So go to the charge nurse. Question 3. The Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act, aka HIPAA. Yes, HIPAA. You're going to hear HIPAA here and there. HIPAA. You probably even heard HIPAA before you was a CNA when you started working at any other job. Because any job you go to, HIPAA is there. HIPAA is there, especially if it's in the healthcare. HIPAA. So HIPAA stands for H, health, I, insurance, P, probability, A, accountability, and A, act. So anytime you hear HIPAA, it's Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act. So HIPAA is just what we're going to abbreviate it as, because nobody is going to come to you on the job and say, hey, did you read the Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act? You're going to be like, what are you talking about? Like, in your head, of course. No, they're going to say, did you read the HIPAA? Do you know what HIPAA is? So HIPAA is important to you as the CNA because HIPAA is important to the nurse aide because A, allow residents to carry health care from the hospital to the nursing home. B, provides insurance coverage for the resident and the healthcare worker. C, identify protected health information that must remain confidential. D, revise accountability for care offered across healthcare settings. And I do not expect those of you who do not know the answer to know the answer. I don't. This is the whole reason why you're listening to this podcast style, for you to understand what HIPAA is. I promise you, once we go over this question, you're going to know what HIPAA is. Once we go over every question that you listen to in the study guides, you're going to understand what it is, because I want you to understand the scenarios, then memorize it. I want you to understand what it is, then memorize it, because there will be some questions on that test word for word, because I saw some questions on that test, word for word from Prometric. And some questions was just trying to trick me, but they wasn't tricking me. They was just reworded. That's all it is. So when you understand the concepts, anybody can hit you with anybody. You're ready for whatever when you understand the concept. So I want you to understand the concept. Out of all of these, which one would you choose? HIPAA is important for you as a CNA because what does HIPAA do? We're about to talk about it. The answer is C. Identify, protect health information that must remain confidential. And we're going to talk about why it is like this. So, the Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act addresses protected health information that must remain confidential. Confidential is like exclusive. Like, this is exclusive information. This is not for anybody outside to know. This is like, confidential is like, it's not a secret, but it's if you're invited in the group. So this is between me and you. If I'm sharing you this study guide, this is confidential information. I don't want you guys to be sharing this to nobody. That's an example. Of course, share it to anybody you feel like it's going to help them pass their exam. Like, please help everybody out there. Like, I want everybody to win because there's room for everybody to shine. The sun has its time to shine. The moon has their time to shine. There's room for everybody to shine. So share it to help everybody. But that's an example. Confidential. This is confidential information. Do not share this study guide. That's just an example. So HIPAA is confidential information. This is important to you as a nurse aide because you will have access to all of your patients' health information. I mean, you will be able to see everything that's needed for you to see. Everything that's needed for you to see. So staff must be very, very careful about how documentation is handled, as well as verbal communication. Be careful with how you speak to people about your patient, because if it's a coworker and they have the information on the patient, you can speak to them. But for example, if you're speaking to them about the information and their family is there, the other patients or residents are around you, it's inappropriate. You're violating HIPAA. You can't do that. But if you guys are in a private setting and say you want to talk to the nurse is at the nurse station, it's just you and her or you and him, and you have a question, you can talk about it if there's no other person around. So it's confidential information that cannot or shouldn't be discussed in public areas. So, for example, when your patient health information is discussed between a team member, the discussion should occur in a private manner. I don't know why I was quivering right there. My apologies, to protect the information. So HIPAA, this is how I want you to remember HIPAA. And this is gonna sound very weird. This is how I connect everything. This is what my teachers, they tell me when I'm learning. I have weird ways of connecting things. So if you find a different way to remember HIPAA, put it in the comments and help others out. But this is how I want you to remember HIPAA. HIPAA is confidential. If you're spreading that information, you gotta bump a hip to her. It don't make sense, but it do. So HIPAA is confidential. If you're spreading that information, you gotta bump a hip to her. So like, when you're in a scenario with your peoples, which is like your friends, your girl, anybody that's just like in your inner circle, your go-to, your day one people. and you're trying to tell them some moves you're trying to make because you trust them, and then you're telling it kind of like a secret, and then you look at them and they're like, oh, you talking about that? Oh, you talking about this? Oh, you mean that? And they're being loud about it. You gotta bump, like bump him. You bump a hip, like just bump a hip to her, like, no, chill. Don't be loud about that. It's confidential. That is what HIPAA is. See, now you're going to remember this. You're going to remember this. The information is confidential. If they spread it, you bump a hip to her. It's time to bump them. You got to bump them and remind them, hey, you can't do that. So HIPAA is just confidential information. Anything that has to do with, you're going to look at your patients, you're going to see their charts, and their chart is going to say, oh, they have so-and-so. They have urinary catheter. They have a urinary infection. They have, you just things you can't say going on with the health. A lot of you guys go to a doctor, go to a checkup, and they will make sure that they close the room. They will make sure that they don't spread information out where other people can hear your information. You don't want nobody knowing about your health issues. If you're going for a checkup, you don't want nobody knowing what's going on with you. That's gotta keep it low key. That's what HIPAA is. It's confidential information. If they start talking, you gotta bump a hit to her. This is confidential information. So it's important for you as a nurse aide because you're the one who's protecting the information from your patient. This time, you're the healthcare provider. The roles are flipped. When you're at the doctor's office, it's the doctor. But now you're the CNA and you have a patient. You're the healthcare provider. So, now that you understand what HIPAA is, I want you to understand why A, B, and D has nothing to do with these answers. A says, first let's read the question. And remember what the question is asking us. HIPAA is important to the nurse aide because it, A says, allow residents to carry health care information from the hospital to the nursing home. It's important to the nurse aide. This question is asking, how is it important to you? It's not asking how it's important to the residents. It's not asking how it's important to John, to Jane, to nobody, but you as a CNA. So A has nothing to do with you allowing the resident to carry healthcare information to the hospital, from the hospital to the nursing home. And most likely the resident won't even be allowed to carry healthcare information from the hospital to the nursing home unless they request it, because they have the right to know their own confidential healthcare information, especially if they are, cognizant, aware, and oriented. They have the rights to do that, but most likely they're not going to do that. And it's canceled out because it's talking about the resident, what they can do with the information. It's not talking about what you as CNA can do with the information. So A, no. See, this is what HIPAA is going to ask you. If it's important, you got to really read these questions. Just read the questions. Because if you don't read the question right, you're going to trick yourself. The test is not tricking you. You're going to trick yourself. So B says, provide insurance coverage for the residents and healthcare workers. HIPAA is a Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act. HIPAA does not provide insurance. Your insurance provide insurance coverage. I know most of us, we hear insurance, we're already automatically thinking coverage, car insurance, home insurance, health insurance. We're thinking coverage, but it's healthcare insurance. Think of insurance like you're assured. you're assured. That's really what like insurance is. Yes, it's coverage, but you're assured. So it's like, I'm breaking down HIPAA even more details because B might trick you, and I want you to understand why it's not B. B is saying provides insurance coverage for the resident and the healthcare provider. B is saying HIPAA covers the healthcare provider, you as the CNA, and it covers the residents, which it might feel like it's the correct answer. It might feel like it's the correct answer, but it's not, because HIPAA is giving insurance to the resident. Only the resident. It's a healthcare insurance probability. It's giving insurance to and only the resident, because you as the CNA is accountable to keep them covered. You get what I'm saying? You see, it makes sense now, right? Healthcare insurance probability and accountability. You're making sure that your residents are insured. You're covering their information because it's confidential, but you have to take accountability for that. And in order to be accountable is to make sure that all the confidential information is covered. So that's why B is out, because it's providing coverage for the resident and the healthcare provider. HIPAA doesn't really provide coverage for a healthcare provider because you are the healthcare provider. Now, if you're in a scenario where your healthcare information is being put out there, then that means somebody is your healthcare provider, like the doctor, who has to make sure you're covered and all your information is confidential. You see? So that's why B is out. And D says revise accountability for care offered across the healthcare setting. And this is why they want to confuse you what HIPAA is. If you don't know what HIPAA is, HIPAA will really just trick you. So this is why I want you to understand what HIPAA is. HIPAA is to make sure that your confidential information is covered. You as a CNA protects your patient, your resident. You as a healthcare provider in general, say you want to further your career as a nurse, further your career as a doctor, become a medical assistant, anything, you have to make sure all that information is covered. When you chart, there's going to be a time when you're on the floor and you have to chart for your resident, and you're going to feel so busy. Sometimes you might feel overwhelmed. When you're charting, you can't leave all their information open. You have to log off your computer because it's confidential. You don't know who can walk in there and start looking at the charts. That's why. So these cancel out because it's not revised accountability for care offered across the health care setting. It might feel like it's the correct one, but HIPAA is for confidential. Revise has nothing to do with HIPAA. Yes, HIPAA gives you accountability for care offered across the healthcare setting, but HIPAA is mostly for identity protection, health information that must remain confidential. Everything confidential. When you get on the field, you're going to notice that like some of the nurses, they're going to log off their computer after they're done charting, or they're going to hide the screen. It will say screen hidden, because even though I'm taking care of the same patient she's taking care of, she still can't leave her screen open for me to walk past and I'm just looking at the charts, because you're accountable to cover your patient. The Health Insurance Probability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, you're accountable to cover your patient. So if it's confidential and they start spreading out that information, you got a HIPAA. Come on. You got a HIPAA. You can't violate, and you shouldn't violate HIPAA. HIPAA violation could be like taking pictures of healthcare information and posting it on social media. I mean, we're in a time and age of social media, so it's like you even got to be even more and more careful. Like, even though this is not healthcare information, this could be something very simple. But say you got your first job and you're so excited, and yay, I got my first job, and they give you a badge. And you take a picture for TikTok, you make a video for TikTok. Make sure you flip your badge. Make sure you flip your badge. Is going to have your whole information on it. It's going to have where you work. Protect yourself. Flip it over. Protect the others. You don't know who's watching you. Flip it over, violation of HIPAA. So remember, it's confidential information. And I'm pretty sure by now you know exactly what HIPAA is. I'm pretty sure by now you understand what HIPAA is. I'm telling you, every time we're going to go over these questions, I'm going to make sure you understand. And if you don't feel like you get it the first time, listen to the playlist the second time. Listen to as much as you want until you feel comfortable and confident to take your written exam. Question 4. Which action is most? See how I capitalize the most? Keep that in mind. Which action is most helpful to decrease a resident incontinence? And for those who don't know what incontinent means, or incontinence means that they are not able to get up, use the toilet and pee, or get up and pee inside a bedpan. Basically, it's either they don't know when, or they don't know how to walk or just get up and transfer themselves to use the bathroom by themselves, or they're not aware when they need to go. So they pee inside their underwear or their pamper, or it could wet the bed. So being continent is basically what we can do. We're able to know, hey, our bladder is full. It's time for us to go to the bathroom. We're about to go to the bathroom and we're about to pee. Incontinent is the opposite. It's either you're not aware that you need to pee and you end up peeing on yourself, or that you're unable to get up and go, and you do the choice to have a urinate on yourself. So that is what incontinent is. So which action is the most helpful to decrease, make it go low, we're going low, down, a resident's incontinence? Is it A, leave the bedpan in place for extra time? B, put on incontinent brief on resident? C, answering the call light quickly? D, controlling fluids and take throughout the day? So which answer would it be? And the answer is C, answering the call light quickly. And the reason why is because several age-related changes affect your urinary system. It can cause elderly residents or your patients to feel a sense of urgency when they need to urinate. This means they feel the urge to use the bathroom. They usually will need to go to the bathroom very quickly. One of these changes is that the bladder stores less urine. Another change is that the bladder muscle weakens, meaning the bladder does not empty completely. So imagine you going to the bathroom. Sometimes when I take my residents to the bathroom, they sit on the toilet about 3 minutes before they pee, because it's not empty. They're not ready. It's just not empty completely. Or sometimes they will pee, and after they pee, you will have to wait about 3 minutes to complete the peeing. So when your patient uses the call light, it indicates that they need to use the bathroom. The nurse aide, you as a CNA, should respond to the call light quickly. In doing so, you as a CNA will be able to help the resident with eliminating their needs, and preventing any incidents or incontinence. So the answer is C, because the question is asking which action is the most helpful to decrease a resident incontinence. So we already broke down what incontinence means. Is when they're unable to get up by themselves and use the bathroom, or some of them don't know when they have to use the bathroom. Most of those who knows when they have to use the bathroom, their bladder will let them know, but they have a hard time getting up and going to use the bathroom. So they will use their call light, and when their call light is on, it's going to decrease the amount of incontinence, because if you answer the call light, most likely they have to get up and go. If you leave the call light on for a long time, they might just pee on themselves or pee in their brief, and you will have to go and change them. So trust me, it's better answering the call light to let them use the bathroom than let them pee on themselves, and you clean up the underwear, you clean everything up. It would just be a bigger mess. It's kind of like prevention. You're like preventing something from happening, and it really does decrease the amount of incontinence going on. So let's talk about why A, B, and D is not the answer choice at all. Now, A says leave the bedpan in place for extra time. And the question is asking which action is most helpful to decrease resident incontinence. A is not correct, because we do not, every time you take your written exam, you cannot and you should not assume their care plan. We do not know if the resident uses a bedpan. We do not know if the resident uses a brief. We do not know if the resident uses a diaper. We do not know if the resident can walk. We do not know if the resident can be in the wheelchair. So we can't pick A, because we do not know if the resident even used a bedpan. So A would be canceled out, because that would be making assumptions. B is put on incontinent brief on resident, and some may think that's the correct answer because it's an incontinent brief, so you would think it decreases your incontinuity, but it doesn't, because when you put an incontinent brief on, most likely they will pee in the incontinent brief, but in order to prevent them from peeing in the incontinent brief is by answering their call light when they let you know that they need to use the bathroom, which decreases incontinence in your residence. See how it's all going full circle. Now, D says controlling Fluence and Take throughout the day. You remember in the previous question that we talked about us as a nursing assistant, you cannot control what fluids. If they're nectar, we can't control how much. If they're on fluid restriction, we can't control how much they take in. That's the doctor's order, and it's in their care plan. So we can't say, no, you drink too much today, you're gonna wet yourself, I'm taking your ice water away from you. We can't do that. If they want the ice water, they can drink the ice water as many times. It's not gonna prevent them from being incontinent. The best answer would be to answer the call light, because that prevents them from being incontinent. Question 5. When a resident has an indwelling urinary catheter, the nurse aide should expect the resident care plan will include. So the question is asking, when a resident has a urinary catheter, you as the CNA should expect that the care plan include. And for those who do not know what a urinary catheter is a tube that goes up into, I forgot the medical term for it. So it goes up into the hole that you urinate from, in males and females. So there will be a tube that goes up into your urinal. I believe it's actually called your urinal, where you urinate from. There will be a tube stuck up in there, regardless if you're a male or a female. There will be this tube. It's a long tube, and down below with this long tube, kind of like a straw, but it's a tube. It's a skinny tube that's the size of a straw, but it's flexible, so it doesn't break like a straw. There will be a bag near their leg, or probably on their bed, on the side of their bed, hanging on the side of their bed. And that bag will have the liquid. And the fluid there is just urine, because that's where the tube drips down, all the way down to the bag full of urine. So that is a urinary catheter. So you ask the CNA, what should you expect that the care plan will include? Is it A, limiting activity by keeping the residents on bed rest? B, emptying the urinary drainage every 2 hours? C, keep in the area where the catheter censor the body clean. I believe it's a spelling error that I made, so I just want to say my apologies for that, because I'm reading the question and that definitely did not make sense. So cross out the N. It's just keep the area where the catheter enters the body clean. It's just that. And then D, toileting the resident every 2 hours for battery draining. And we are going to answer this question very, very soon. And the answer is C. And the reason why is because when a patient has an indwelling urinary catheter, your patient or the resident has an increase, like it's going up. You have a higher risk for infection, since bacteria have direct track into the body through the catheter. You have higher chances of getting an infection from there. This makes it so important to keep that inserted area clean as a bean. Keep it clean. So this catheter can include cleaning around the meatus. That's the correct answer. Not the correct answer, but that's what it's called, the meatus. The meatus is the hole that you urinate from. The meatus. So clean around the meatus, where the urine comes out. A little TMI, but wherever you urinate, girls and guys, men and women, male and female, however you identify yourself as, have a meatus. And anything that can basically pee has a meatus. So you clean around there, and a couple inches away from the tube. And when you clean the tube, always wipe away from the body. So you go from the meatus down to how I talked about where the bag is. So we don't want things going up in there, because that's going to cause more infection. You want to wipe it down, away. It is also provided if your patient becomes soiled. So they also have higher risk. Like if your patient peed and they're in their bed for a long time, they also have higher risk of being sick from that opening insertion. So it's very important to keep that area clean. It's very important. Also, it's important to empty it every 2 hours. But we're gonna talk about why these other answers is not it and why C is it. So the reason it's not A is because A is saying that limiting activity by keeping the resident on bed rest is what you will expect to be in the care plan. But that is the least thing you would expect to be in the care plan. Most likely, somebody with a catheter might just want to stand still, lay in bed all day. But some of them, they walk around, they don't want to lay in bed. They want to be part of the activity. And you got to allow them to. B says emptying the urinary drainage bag every 2 hours. Now, this one, I would not knock anybody for wanting to choose B because it sounds pretty accurate. You clean out the drainage bag every 2 hours. But it's not the most important thing to expect. It's not the most important thing to expect. And D says toileting. I don't even know why I'm sounding like that, so I apologize. So D says toileting. It's my accent. It's my accent, guys. So basically, taking them to the toilet. Take the resident to the toilet every 2 hours. You don't have to take the resident to the toilet every 2 hours because most likely they're gonna urinate through the bag. But if they want to go to the toilet to have a bowel movement, they can, because the urinary catheter, it does not cover the BM aspect of that. So that's optional, but it's not expected in the care plan. The main thing for you to expect anytime there's a catheter is to make sure it is clean. And most likely when you're actually in the field, when you clean them up, because sometimes the catheter leaks, so most likely they will be wearing incontinent brief. You're going to have to clean up their brief. When you clean up their brief, you clean up the catheter. So it's gonna happen automatic, but that's the main thing you should expect for you to be able to clean up that catheter, and make sure you clean it from the meatus down. Question 6, and there's so many spelling errors in this one, so I apologize in advance. Work with me here. Listen to my voice and ignore the spelling errors. When counting a resident's pulse, the nurse aide should, okay? Spelling error. A, notice if the rhythm of the heartbeat is regular. B, ask if the resident take any heart medication. C, consider the time of the day when the pulse is taking. Pause. Not pasta, pause. And then there's D. Multiply the rate by 4 if you count it for 30 seconds. Now, when you are counting your patient's pulse, what is it that you should do, you as the CNA? And we're going to get into what it is that you should do in a moment. And the answer is A, notice if the rhythm of the heartbeat is regular. And the reason why is because when you are counting a patient pulse, you as a CNA should not only just count the heart rate, but you should also pay attention to the rhythm. So you should pay attention if they're breathing slow or breathing fast, like hyperventilating. And if your resident or your patient heart rhythm is usually regular, the heartbeat becoming irregular would be a sign of heart problems. So change in the heart rhythm should be reported to the nurse. And this is kind of like one of those things that it's kind of one of those things that you gotta know. You just gotta know. So to cancel these things out will kind of be like, it's either you know it or you don't. And when you're charting, they're going to ask you, when you put in your pulse, after you count all your patient pulse, they're going to ask you, was it regular or was it irregular? Just to ask did you notice that your patient was slowing down in breath? Did you notice that your patient was speeding up in breath? So the answer is A. And let's talk about all the other answers and why they're not, because I also want you guys to understand why they're not. I want you to understand the given situation. So B, if the resident takes any heart medication. The question asks, when counting a resident pulse, the nurse aide should ask if a resident takes any heart medication. Is not needed because majority of your residents will probably take heart medication, but we're not going to even assume that they are or if they're not, because regardless if they're taking heart medication or if they're not taking heart medication, you have to see, are they breathing regular? with the medication or no medication? Are they even breathing regular? You see how it still points to A? C says, consider the time of the day when the pulse is taking. Like taking temperature, when you take your resident temperature, you have to consider rather they ate cold or hot food because it could mess up the temperature. But there's no time of the day that's going to mess up your heart rate rhythm or trickle it. Most likely the only way for your heart rate to change is you just exercise or you're resting, you're sleeping. But the time of the day shouldn't affect as much, because even when you're sleeping, your heart rate will be regular because your heart is beating regular. When you're exercising, of course, your heart rate will be a little up. You have energy in you, but that's why it says A. Notice if the rhythm of the heart rate is regular. So just notice it. Just pay attention to that. Still, C is canceled out because it says consider the time of the day, but the time of the day is irrelevant to noticing the heart rate beat. And D says multiply the ratio by 4 if you count for 30 seconds. D is definitely tripping and trying to trick. But they just want to know, do you understand how to count heart rate? When you count somebody's heart rate, you count it for 30 seconds and you multiply it by 2, because 30 plus 30 equals 60 and 60 equals 1 minute. So multiplying by 4 will be completely inaccurate. Question 7. How much assistance does a resident receiving PROM or PROM need from a nurse aide? You as the CNA. And for those of you who does not know what PROM is, PROM stands for passive range of motion. P for passive, R for range, O for of, M for motion. So how much assistance does a resident receiving PROM need from the nurse aide? Is it A, partial assistance with range of motion exercises? So please excuse A, I completely miswrote that. It said partial assistance is range of motion. That's not right. I meant to say partial assistance with range of motion exercise. This is why I want you guys to also hear the audio and don't trust the visuals too much, because I am human. I'm not perfect. So I do apologize. Is it B, full assistance with the nurse aide taking the joint through exercise? C, minimal assistance to just remind the resident when it's time to exercise? Or D, minimal assistance to provide extremity support while the resident moves joint? So how much assistance do you need to give when you do passive range of motion? The answer is B, full assistance with the nurse aide taking the joint through exercise. And the reason for that is because passive range of motion indicates that the resident is unable to move his or her own limbs to perform the exercises. So the resident will need you as the CNA to guide the resident limbs through the exercise, which means that the resident's role in the exercise is passive. That's where the passive comes from. Since the resident is not performing the exercise, given the resident verbal instructions or prompt about how to perform the exercise is not really necessary. So it's passive because they're not really doing the work. You are doing the work. Passive range of motion is like, for instance, I want you guys to just close your eyes so I can break down passive range of motion. Close your eyes. we're in the scenario where your patient needs to stretch out their right arm, but they have a stroke on the right arm. When you have a stroke on the right arm, you're unable to move it. So you're in the room with a patient who has a right arm stroke. They are unable to move it. You as a CNA, part of their care plan, you have to give passive range of motion. So me giving passive range of motion, what do I need to do to them? Well, first of all, because they can't move their arm, that's the main reason why it is passive, because they can't move it at all. They need your assistance. So you would need full on, full throttle, full assistance with helping the patient move. And you will probably just stretch their arms. Say their arms are crossed, and imagine them, they have their arms crossed, but the right arm is unable to uncross. So you tell them, can you lift up your left arm? You're not helping them lift it up. Then you say, okay. They lift up their left arm. You say, can you please put down your left arm? They're laying it down on the side. So now their left arm is laid down on the side. Their right arm is still crossed on their chest. They cannot move it. So you lift it up for them. And that's passive range of motion, because you're giving them full on assistance through the joint exercise. So I hope you could visualize you being in that scenario. Now open your eyes and let's look at all the options and talk about why the other options are not the answer to this test. Because let's start with A, of course. A is completely, don't even bother reading it, just hear my voice when I say it. So A says partial assistant with range of motion exercises. A is not correct because partial, it's half. You need full assistance. How much assistance do you give? Full. When it's passive, you always give full range of emotion. C is minimal, and you already see D also says minimal. If we both know that passive range of motion needs full assistance, anything that has nothing to do with full assistance is canceled out. So that's why C and D is also canceled out. Question 8. Which of the following is the best? See how I emphasize best? Which of the following is the best example of using reality orientation for residents with dementia? And those who don't know what dementia is when you're confused. It's a disease that elderly people get, and they usually forget a lot. They're confused, and sometimes they're not so oriented with what's going on. So which one would be the best to bring them back to reality? Is it A, your son plans to visit today at 2 p.m. B, you're in a nursing home. I'm here to help you. C, this is your daughter Anna. Do you remember her? D, look at the time. Lunch is 30 minutes. Are you feeling hungry? So which one would be the best answer to give? And the answer is D. Look at the time. Lunch is 30 minutes. Are you feeling hungry? And the reason why the answer is D is because reality orientation is a process of reminding or orienting your patient to person, place, or thing. Basically a noun. For your patient with early dementia, putting time into the context of the day and routine can be helpful. Lunch is part of a life routine, and reminding the resident about that, relating it to eating and being hungry, can be reassuring and helpful. In the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, when a resident may be aware and frightened by loss of memory, try to avoid contributing to the resident anxiety by making statements such as, "Don't you remember your daughter?" So the answer is D, because you have to remind them with time, but also remind them with a routine. So anything you're reminding them with dementia, the best answer would be with time and a routine. We all have lunch, we all have dinner. It's something that most people find it common. Even when we don't have lunch, it's a routine for most people. So A wouldn't be the answer, because it's saying your son plans to visit today at 2 p.m. Those with dementia, even though it has time, even though it's a time, they won't remember it because it's not a routine. Their son could be visiting them every other Wednesday, and it could be a routine to you, but it's not a routine to them. It's not a daily. You see, like daily, it's a big thing. It's something you do every day. You brush your teeth, you take your shower, you take a nap, you go to sleep, you eat. Daily routines, something that we all do daily, back to back to back. So that's why A is out. Now B is saying you're in a nursing home. I'm here to help you. Reminding them where they're here and what you're about to do is just going to bring them anxiety and make them cry most of the time. Some may even argue with you. So B would not be the best example to orient them. And C says, "This is your daughter, Anna. Do you remember her?" The last thing you want to do with someone with dementia is ask them if they remember, because that's going to bring them anxiety too, because part of having dementia is that you don't remember things so well. Question 9. When a resident is dark-skinned. Now, dark-skinned can mean a lot, okay? Most likely they will be in the African American community or even in the Black community, but you can be a dark-skinned Hispanic, Latino X. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, please. You can be a dark-skinned Asian. So just think of dark-skinned in general, okay? So I just wanted to clarify that out. And most likely it's in the color community. I can't speak outside of the color community, but let's continue with the question. Keep that in mind too, okay? When a resident is dark-skinned, the first sign of skin breakdown, instead of appearing pale and red, it may appear A, black, B, green, C, purple, or D, white. Let that sink in now. Out of all the colors, when your skin is breaking down, for a dark-skinned individual, what color will come out the most, especially when you take care of your patient? The answer is C. And the reason why is because someone who have lighter skin, and this is why I clarify that this is not a race thing. You can be in the Black community and have lighter skin, and you can be in the Black community and have darker skin. You can be in the Asian community and have light skin, white as snow, and be in the Asian community and have darker skin. But I don't like the word dark. I honestly don't like the word dark because it sounds so negative. I don't like the way Prometric said it. But I'm going to say this instead of dark. We're going to say deeper. You can have a deeper complexion in the Asian community that is like sand, like golden sand, you know? And in the Asian community, that can be seen as deeper skin complexion. But in the African American community, that is a lighter skin complexion compared to somebody in the African American community. Their complexion could be dark, like milk chocolate compared to sand. You know, compared to like the sun sand, like sandy brown. So when someone is lighter complexion, if their skin is breaking down, it will be red. That will be a sign. It will be red. It will be pale. It will be red and it will be pale. Yes, it will, because I've experienced it. When some have darker, not darker, but deeper, because deeper skin complexion, it will come out more purple. That will be a sign of skin breakdown. It will be purple. So keep in mind that for the sake of Prometric, I'm gonna say darker skin if it pops up, because they're not gonna say deeper skin complexion. I'm just doing it because I prefer using that word. But on Prometrics, when you see something that says darker skin complexion, skin breakdown, purple is the answer, because the skin will appear purple, black will not appear, green will not appear, and white will not appear for somebody who has a deeper skin complexion. And I only been a CNA for 1 year so far. May 2021 would make it 1 year. So I'm still fresh, I'm still new, I'm still pretty new. I'm learning with you guys, and I seen how skin really breaks down. It will break down to the point where you will see pale white meat, the meat of your skin showing. Sometimes it will peel as if there's a whole nother layer of weak, soft, brittle skin right under there, and it's peeling. I've witnessed it myself. I witnessed being in the field, and there is darker. See, I don't like the word darker. Deeper skin, like deeper complected Asians that I've changed. I had to change them, and their skin breakdown was purple. As soon as you see a skin breakdown, tell the nurse. If the nurse knows, she put it in her chart. She let everybody else on the higher on the higher level of the healthcare field to know and be aware of that. But you will see a lot, and I'm not trying to make you guys squirm. I'm not trying to make you guys like push away, but this channel is not for the weak. It's not for the weak. I'm trying to tell you now. I'm not here to sugarcoat the beauty. There's good and bad coming out of being a CNA. And as I'm making these videos, I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I'm here to help you guys through the process, because if I'm on game, you're gonna get on game too. Like I said, everybody can shine. I'm here to make sure that you pass your written exam, because you got it. Calm down, take a breath, watch all these videos. You got it. I'm telling you, I'm giving you all the resources I can, and I'm also explaining my experience and what you might go through, in hope that when I was a CNA, I wish somebody would have told me this and that. I wish somebody would have gave me a heads up on this. And some of the things I might give you guys a heads up in future videos are not going to be the prettiest things, but it's reality. It's the truth, and it's not for the weak. So I'm not here to glamorize the beauty of things when there's some ugly parts to it. So just remember, deeper skin complexion will have darker signs of skin breakdown. And last question 10. Those are you who are here with me. You know, I gotta give you a big shout out. We last question. You know, we there. We almost at the finish line. So one thing my mom can always tell me, if you guys don't know, I am African. So you better not dead. Don't let it 100 dead kill you now. Don't let it kill you. We bear 9 questions. Don't let the 10th one kill you. You bear it, just let it be so. So, question 10 says, a resident has a contracture of the right arm. And you see that I said right. It's a big deal. Keep in mind, right arm. When putting on the resident's bottom front shirt, the nurse aide should, so you as a CNA, You remember when you was in your CNA class and you have to do the skills of dressing with a weak arm. A contracture is basically saying that your resident has a weak arm. And remember how I said in the beginning of the videos, if it feels too overwhelming with the question, break it down. Break it down and reword it to feel comfortable. So this is how I will break it down for you guys. Instead of me saying a resident has a contracture of the right arm when putting on a resident's bottom front shirt, the nurse aide should, I would say, my patient has a weak right arm, and I'm about to put on their bottom front. So what should I do? And the options is A, put the shirt sleeve on the left arm first, then the right arm. B, ask which arm the resident prefers the sleeve to go first. C, put the shirt sleeve on the right arm first, then the left arm. D, raise resident's arms up to slide both sleeves at the same time. So which one would it be? And the answer is C, put the shirt on the right arm first, then the left arm. The reason why is because you always dress them when you're dressing somebody. You start with the weak arm first and you finish with the strong arm. So if the resident has a contracture on the right arm, you're gonna put the right arm first and then you put the left arm. So you put the shirt sleeve on the right arm first and the left arms. You dress with the weak and you finish it off with the strong side. Let's talk about why it's canceled out for the other ones. A is canceled out to put the shirt sleeve on the left arm first, then the right arm, because you dress with your right arm. So in this scenario, if your patient has a weak okay, close your eyes. Trust me with this one. You're in the room, your patient I love using this stroke scenario because you're going to see stroke patients somewhere down your experience being a CNA. Your patient has a stroke on the right side. The right side means they cannot move it. They had a stroke. That's their weakest arm. You need to dress them. A is not correct because you cannot dress them with their strong side first. Here's why. You dress them with their weak side is because they can use their left arm, their strong arm, to put and help you put on the weak side. Now open your eyes. Look at question A. It says put on the shirt from left arm first, then right arm. So that's incorrect. You put on shirt from right arm to left arm because that left arm will help you assist. B is incorrect because it says ask which arm the resident prefers the sleeve to go first. You shouldn't ask the resident if the question already says that the resident has a right arm that's weak. If the question already gives the care plan, you will have to do what is the best or what is the right option. And the right option is to put the right arm on first and the left arm on last. And D is incorrect because they have one weak side, which is the right side. So we cannot put both sleeves on at all. So that would not be the correct answer to give. And that concludes it. That concludes the last question. And you guys did it. That does it. Like, you completed all of the questions. If you made it to the end, drop down any emoji that is medical related. It could be an ambulance, stethoscope. It could be the white coat, you in a white coat emoji. Anything that has any relations with medical. It could be a heart, anything. If you made it that far. And also, I want to tell you guys, slow down, breathe. You got this. Breathe. You got this. Do not stress yourself out at all, because I gave you all the resources. So you really do got this. Repeat after me. I got this. I will pass my nursing assistant state board. I'll be certified as a nursing assistant. I got this. Because you guys truly, truly do got this. I hope that this podcast these study guides help you. I mean, you can watch it, listen to it. You can listen to it while you're cleaning up, while you're washing the dishes, while you're driving. I hope it just helps you to get all this information in green. And I want to break it down in different parts because this is 50 questions, but we are only doing 10 questions in each video. Just a reminder, if you guys haven't watched the previous podcast study guide, the link is down below. Check it out, re-listen. I'm here to help by any means, and anybody who's here to help anybody, drop it in the comments, put people on game. I definitely do hope you guys enjoy this video. And remember, what you are is what you've been. What you'll be is what you do now. I will see you guys in my next video.